From terrifying krakens to mysterious serpents, sea monsters on ancient maps weren't just decorative drawings. These fascinating creatures played a crucial role in maritime navigation, warning sailors of dangerous waters and unexplored territories. Let's dive into their remarkable story. When medieval mapmakers sat down to create their masterpieces, they weren't just drawing from pure imagination. They carefully collected stories from sailors who claimed to have encountered massive creatures at sea. These cartographers, known as cosmographers, would blend these first-hand accounts with popular myths and religious beliefs of their time. They used special red and black inks, carefully detailing scales, tentacles, and fearsome eyes of these ocean dwellers. What's really interesting is that many of these artists never actually saw the sea themselves. They worked from their inland workshops, translating sailors' tales into the incredible monsters we see on ancient maps today. You might be surprised to learn that the phrase "here be dragons" rarely appeared on ancient maps. In fact, it's only found on one known historical map, the Lennox globe from 1510. However, mapmakers did use various Latin phrases and symbols to mark dangerous or unknown areas. They would write HC Svent dracones, here are dragons, or draw sea monsters to warn sailors about treacherous waters, strong currents, and unexplored regions. These warnings weren't just about mythical creatures. They often marked real navigational hazards that sailors needed to avoid. The dragons and monsters served as a practical way to communicate danger to sailors who might not be able to read, making these illustrations both artistic and functional navigation tools. These sea monster illustrations weren't just there to look scary. They actually served as valuable navigation tools for sailors. The positioning of monsters on maps often indicated specific ocean conditions. For example, a giant whale might mark areas known for dangerous whirlpools, while serpents could indicate strong currents or rocky shoals. Sailors used these creature markers like we use warning signs today. The size and direction of the monsters also mattered. A sea creature drawn swimming away from a coastline often meant dangerous offshore winds, while monsters near islands could signal shallow reefs. Even the colors used to draw these creatures had meaning, with darker shades typically warning of deeper, more treacherous waters. This clever system helped sailors, especially those who couldn't read traditional maps, navigate safely through unfamiliar waters. The legendary kraken wasn't just a tall tale. It actually influenced how ships planned their voyages across the seas. When sailors reported massive tentacles rising from the depths, these sightings were carefully documented and shared among maritime communities. Ship captains would often adjust their routes to avoid areas known for kraken sightings, especially in the cold waters of the North Atlantic. What's fascinating is that these historical accounts likely described real encounters with giant squid, which we now know can grow up to 43 feet long. These creature sightings led to the development of alternative shipping lanes, particularly around the Norwegian coastline and Icelandic waters. Merchants would sometimes choose longer routes, adding days to their journeys, just to avoid these supposed kraken hotspots. Medieval traders had to make crucial decisions about their routes based on these monster-filled maps. Merchants would study these maps carefully, using sea monster markers to plot safer journeys for their valuable cargo. For example, Arabic trade routes to Europe often showed massive sea serpents near the Strait of Gibraltar, warning ships about its powerful and unpredictable currents. In the Baltic Sea, merchants used maps marked with fearsome creatures to avoid dangerous shallow reefs and sandbanks. These warnings were so reliable that major trading companies of the time would pay high prices for maps with detailed monster markings. Even the famous Hanseatic League, a powerful merchant group, relied on these creature-marked maps to plan their extensive trading network across northern Europe. Let's uncover the real marine animals that inspired these legendary sea monsters. When sailors reported seeing massive creatures with long necks, they were likely spotting oarfish, which can grow up to 36 feet long. Those terrifying tentacles rising from the depths? Almost certainly giant squid, which we now know exist in our oceans. Basking sharks, with their huge open mouths, often got mistaken for sea monsters, while the mysterious sounds of whale songs led to tales of singing sea creatures. Even walruses and elephant seals, when seen from a distance in foggy conditions, could appear as bizarre, frightening beasts to sailors who had never encountered them before. One of the most practical uses of sea monsters on maps was their role in marking dangerous natural phenomena. Cartographers would strategically place specific types of creatures to indicate real maritime hazards. Large, swirling creatures often marked treacherous whirlpools, while long, serpentine beasts typically indicated hidden reefs or sandbars. Near the Norwegian coast, the famous Moskenstraumen whirlpool was often marked with a massive creature called the sea swine. In the Mediterranean, jagged-backed monsters frequently appeared where submerged rocks posed threats to ships. These illustrated warnings proved especially valuable for sailors crossing language barriers or those who couldn't read traditional navigation notes. Let's look at some legendary maps that revolutionized maritime navigation through their monster illustrations. The Carta Marina from 1539, created by Olaus Magnus, stands as perhaps the most influential sea monster map ever made. This massive map of Scandinavia featured over 20 detailed marine creatures, each marking specific navigation hazards. Another game-changer was the 1572 Theatrum Orbis Terrarum by Abraham Ortelius, which used sea monsters to mark the first known trade routes to the New World. The Waldseemüller map of 1516 took things further by featuring creatures that actually helped European ships navigate around Africa's Cape of Good Hope. These maps weren't just beautiful, they literally shaped how ships moved across our oceans. Modern marine biology has shed fascinating light on those centuries-old sea monster reports. Many sightings of giant serpents likely came from encounters with oarfish, which can reach lengths of 36 feet and swim vertically, exactly how sailors described sea serpents. The infamous Kraken reports match perfectly with giant squid behavior, especially in deep-sea hunting grounds. Even those strange, glowing creatures in sailors' tales can be explained by bioluminescent organisms like jellyfish. What's really interesting is how accurate some of these historical descriptions were. Sailors often reported details about these monsters that science wouldn't confirm until centuries later. Using modern sonar and deep-sea cameras, we've found that many of these supposedly mythical creatures are very real, just not quite as terrifying as the legends suggested. The transition from monster-filled maps to modern ocean charts is a fascinating journey of scientific progress. By the late 1700s, improved navigation tools and systematic ocean surveys began replacing mythical creatures with accurate depth measurements and current patterns. The famous Captain James Cook led the way, creating detailed charts based on careful observations rather than sailors' tales. His maps showed actual marine life instead of monsters, marking the beginning of scientific oceanography. This shift wasn't just about better technology. It represented a fundamental change in how we understood our oceans. Yet even as sea monsters disappeared from maps, their legacy lived on in maritime culture, reminding us of how far we've come in understanding our vast oceans. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey through the world of ancient sea monster maps. If you enjoyed learning about these incredible maritime mysteries, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. See you next time for more historical discoveries.